Welcome, everyone. As we prepare to get started, a few housekeeping items. This webinar is being recorded. It will be available after today's session. Captions are available towards the bottom, and we ask that you please submit any questions in the Q&A box. Jen, over to you.
Thank you, Enoch. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jen Sturdivant, and I'm the care manager at Stanislaus State. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to our webinar, Supporting Students' Basic Needs in the California State University. Our event today is part of National Hunger and Homelessness Awareness Week, an annual program where people come together across the country to draw attention to the issues of food and housing insecurity. Throughout the week, our CSU campuses are hosting a number of educational and advocacy events, as well as continuing to provide critical direct basic needs services to students.
Thank you, Jen. Welcome, everyone. My name is Jessica Medina, and I am the coordinator of the Food Security Project at Fresno State. Our webinar today is the product of collaboration and partnership across the CSU. A number of our basic needs colleagues helped inform this conversation that we are about to engage in, and we would be remiss if we did not extend our gratitude. So thank you. This webinar is intended to highlight research, provide recommendations on ways to serve students, and showcase the pivotal work of our campuses.
Thank you, Jen and Jessica. Welcome, everyone. My name is Enoch, and I serve as the interim project manager at the CSU Office of the Chancellor. Thank you again for joining us today. We hope that you find a lot of value in today's presentation and can leave with new skills and new knowledge. Please welcome our panel moderator, Danielle Munoz.
Hi, everyone. Well, thank you for spending this time with us today. And thank you, Jen, Jessica, and Enoch. So my name is Danielle Munoz, and I'm the CARES Office Case Manager at Sacramento State. And in my role, I oversee some basic needs programs like Student Emergency Housing, our Student Emergency Fund, and the CalFresh Outreach Program. And today I'm excited to serve as your moderator. So with us this afternoon, we have Dr. Leah Jarnigan. She's the Interim System-Wide Director of Student Wellness and Basic Needs Initiatives at the CSU Office of the Chancellor. We have Dr. Rashida Crutchfield, the Associate Professor at Cal State Long Beach. Dr. Jen McGuire, an Associate Professor at Humboldt State University. And Michael Taylor, a graduate student in the Social Work Department at Stanislaus State. So please join me in a virtual welcome to our virtual space. And thank you for serving as our panelists today. You each have unique experiences, and I'm personally looking forward to engaging in conversation with you all. And just in the work we've done in the past, it's just been so wonderful to work with all of you and focus on student basic needs. So I'm very honored today to moderate with you. So let's get this started. Michael, I wanted to begin with you. So the student voice is very important, and so I'm glad that you're here with us today, genuinely. So to set our foundation, I wanted to begin by asking you our first question. So as a student and an individual who is focusing his research on student basic needs, what role does CSU play in addressing student basic needs? And how do you see this support in relation to the mission of student success?
I would like to start off by saying thank you, Danielle, for the amazing question. Also, thank you to the California State University Chancellor's Office, Stanislaus State, and CARES Manager of CSU Stanislaus, Jen Sturdivant, for giving me the opportunity to be a part of this panel. Funny story, when I was asked to be a part of this panel, I was right in the middle of annotating Dr. Crutchfield and Dr. McGuire's research on basic needs for my graduate project. I'm so grateful, honored, and humbled for this opportunity. This is a once-in-a-lifetime moment, so thank you again. To answer your question, the CSU plays a vital role in addressing students' basic needs. It's important because basic needs are just that, basic. They're essential to human functioning. If student basic needs are not met, their short and long-term health and academic success are at risk. I'm not sure if everyone is familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, so I'll give a brief overview. It is a long-standing psychology theory of human motivation developed by Abraham Maslow in 1943. The premise is that there are universal human needs that come together to form a healthy individual. Abraham Maslow depicted them in a pyramid-shaped hierarchy. At the base of the pyramid are basic needs. These are the most important, the basis of a person's functioning. This includes air, water, clothing, housing, and food. The next tier is safety needs, followed by social needs, esteem needs, and finally, at the top of the pyramid, self-actualization. This is achieving full potential and allows for the ability to fulfill creative activities. It is the ideal state for student success. If you do not have secure housing or sufficient food or any of these basic needs, it'd be pretty difficult to function in other areas of life. Without a foundation, we cannot skip ahead to the higher level of needs. If you're a student or somebody trying to make it in the working world, guess what? Pretty hard to focus on those higher level tasks. Participating in class, critically thinking, reading and writing, it becomes difficult when you're distracted by the thoughts of finding safe and stable housing or figuring out your next meal. These stressors can impact your performance as well as your mental, physical, and emotional health. And let me be clear, this is a huge stressor. Getting this issue right and eliminating the unnecessary physical and emotional stress for our food and housing insecure and housing displaced students is very important. It's not just me saying this, but you're hearing it directly from the students who are food and housing insecure currently. They are telling us how important this work is. And my campus, other CSUs, CCCs, and UC campuses are coming together to take important steps toward finding permanent, meaningful solutions for our housing displaced and food insecure students. As a student, I want to see everyone succeed. The CSU has the ability to empower food and housing insecure students to be successful and provide tools for them to use at their disposal. The key is to listen to the food and housing insecure students. They are experiencing the problems. They know better than anybody what would help them succeed in having a meaningful college experience, like every college student hopes to have. I'm really excited for the future of basic needs on campuses. The services are having an impact. I saw it directly when I was a basic needs intern. The pandemic has amplified the need, in my opinion. Stan State and other CSUs have taken on the challenge and are doing great work. Programs on our campus have never skipped a beat. Heroes like Jen Sturtevant adapted. Our pantry never closed. It actually improved. Food distributions continued as scheduled and are being done innovatively and safely. While I was an intern, Jen would always remind us to meet the student in need where they're at. Meet the need right now. Having people in leadership with this mindset gives me so much faith in how great universities can possibly be. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael, so much for going over that, and also just for reviewing what students have to go through, and the success in college really does require students to be functioning sort of that middle to top of that pyramid. And so we really need to make sure that their basic needs are met so they can flourish in college. So thank you so much for that. And you're right that the students themselves are the best to know what's going on. And I know two great people on this panel that have met and talked with students and really have gotten to the bottom of this issue. So our next question is for Dr. Crutchfield and Dr. McGuire, who have sat with students and have heard these stories. And so much of our basic needs work has been informed by the research conducted by Dr. Crutchfield and Dr. McGuire. And so to date, they've actually conducted 3 major studies that continue to shape the work of the CSU in supporting basic needs. And I would even say affecting our ability to get funding and to make a case for why we need support for basic needs services. And that has translated to things like food pantries, opening up basic needs centers. So it's been very impactful. Their most recent research study of student service access and basic needs was published in 2019, April 2019, and can be accessed online. So Enoch, if you wouldn't mind dropping the link to the report, thank you. Okay, so now to the question. So Dr. Crutchfield, Dr. McGuire, can you please tell us about your recent work, specifically the disaggregation of the data by student population? And what did your data tell you about how students of color from marginalized and underserved populations experience basic needs insecurities? And what are the recommendations in addressing their basic needs in alignment with the mission of the CSU?
Thank you so much, Danielle. I'll start off. Again, I'm Rashida Crutchfield. I use she, her pronouns, and this is my work wife, Jen McGuire. And like true academics, we're going to work our way around this question with PowerPoint. So bear with us here. But before we do that, I really want to thank you, Michael. It really is an honor to be here with you and to hear your voice, and you reflect us as we reflect you. So that honor is immense. I'm also very pleased, I know I speak for Jen as well, to be on this great panel. And I really touched and blessed to be with all of you virtually, one way or another. It does feel like it was 1,000 years ago that we were at Chebna, some of us, and you know, time is elusive these days. But we're here to talk to you about a little bit about, just to give some background to the work we've done before, but we're going to speak specifically about work that we did over the summer and are still doing, looking at basic needs and how our students are being impacted both by basic needs insecurity and by COVID. And just so for some background here, we know that in the study that was released in 2018, we did survey at all 23 campuses and did interviews and focus groups at 11 campuses, and found that almost 42% of our students were food insecure. And that means if they were low food insecure, or 20% of our students were low food insecure, they might never feel hungry, but they definitely had high anxiety around where their next meal was coming from, or they had diminished access to food and nutrition. And so that was for 20% of our students, and for almost 22% of our students, they were very low food secure. And that would be missing meals regularly because they didn't have the financial capacity to have them. So also, as a background, we found that almost 11% of our CSU students had experienced homelessness within the past year. And that was much higher for our first-gen African-American students at 18%. And homelessness, again, for just for everyone to be on the same page, homelessness for our students can mean street living or living in places not meant for human habitation. But for many of our students, that meant moving from place to place, never having one place to stay. And that, I think, is really critical for us to think about in a COVID context. And we will talk about that momentarily. So in our phase 3 study, which Enoch put in the chat, we looked at that same data and explored how students utilize their time, their resources. So we found that students who struggle the most, the students who had the lowest food insecurity and highest incidence of homelessness, worked more paid hours and had higher responsibilities to their family financially than other students. And again, we get to think about that and contextualize that in a COVID environment, because it really highlights how hard our students have been working and doing everything within their power to make ends meet. And I'm going to pass it on over to Jen.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. It is a pleasure to be here. And I just want to take a second to welcome everyone who's here in the webinar, you know, whether this is your first time you were talking about basic needs and students, or whether you've been doing the work with us, with the family since, you know, for some years now. I'm really glad that you're here, and it's an honor to be here with this team among all the people who are, who you see in front of you right now. So I just want to talk a little bit about COVID and basic needs. And since mid-March, when COVID-19 emerged, we've seen drastic changes on campus climates across the country. Basic needs insecurity has been exacerbated by COVID, and moving to online learning, students are adjusting, but hunger and homelessness has become more acute, and basic needs security has become more challenging to meet. While students are adjusting to being online, they're also moving, caretaking dependents, changing jobs, and there is so much that they're juggling. Campuses have had to pivot quickly in really creative ways, and we're still learning if the way that we're meeting basic needs in the time of social distancing is, how are we doing it well and what can we do better? This summer, we conducted a study that Rashida referred to, COVID-19 CSU Basic Needs Study. We did this quickly to learn about how basic needs were being impacted for students, how students were adapting, and what their experience is being supported by campus programming. We sent out surveys to 4 different campuses, Long Beach, Dominguez Hills, Monterey Bay, and Humboldt, and heard from 1,300 students via survey. And Rashida was able to talk to 20 students on each of those campuses. So we do have a lot of data that we're working with here. But I'm going to we're working on a report right now to be released, but I'm just going to give you a quick overview of some of the survey findings and Rashida, some of the qualitative findings. When we look at disparities that exist between student experiences that were disaggregated by race and ethnic groups. And I just want to speak and mention that the groups that we chose are based on the census data and how they disaggregate students. And this by no means represents all the different identities that students have. And although we're looking at disparities among groups, I just also want to say basic needs insecurity is unacceptable for all students. Okay, next slide, please. So what you are looking at here is, so food insecurity level by ethnicity prior and during COVID. And so the prior is the yellow bars, and the during COVID is the snapshot of the survey data from July. And if you look along the bottom, you can see the different race and ethnic groups. And so what we really saw here was that basic or that food insecurity, and so that low and very low food security that Rashida was speaking of, that it has remained largely the same. Students still have food insecurity, but it did go up slightly for groups Asian, Black students, Hispanic, Latinx students, and those who did not report their ethnicity. Rashida, did you want to speak to this?
Sure. I want to talk a bit about some of the balance that some of our students are experiencing. And so these 2 quotes come from a student that we, well, she named herself Mary as a pseudonym. And she said, I'm glad that they expanded the way you can access your CalFresh benefits to access being able to pick up food or being able to order food to come to your home, because that's really a really big thing. So when we spoke to students, and we spoke to about 80 students total, often they talked about this dance that they were doing to access food and how important it was to still be able to get support either from pantries or from CalFresh. And, many of us know that there were a lot of changes with CalFresh benefits. And for those students who were able to navigate those changes, that was incredibly helpful. But Mary, like many others, still had to work. And many of our students, you saw on the slide before this, that many students got laid off. A lot of our students were working pre-COVID heavily, sometimes 2, sometimes 3 jobs to make their ends meet. Many of those students were unemployed. However, some of those, by COVID, some of those students were able to continue to work. Many of those students who continued to work were deemed essential workers. So Mary, like other students, worked in food services. And so she said, I still have to work, but I probably generally wouldn't want to expose myself in this way to high trafficked areas, but I have no choice. I still have to make my ends meet. And so I think some of our students, this data was collected in July, and some of our students were still navigating, still trying to pull things together, and we're doing that fairly successfully, although still food insecure, but making some really difficult decisions.
So what we are looking at here is homelessness by ethnicity, again, and race group, based on prior to COVID in March, and then during in July. And what you can see is the red represents the July snapshot, and homelessness, as defined by HUD and McKinney-Vento, it has gone up drastically for lots of students. And if you think about the switch to online learning and what students are navigating, how critical this is, given that, you know, we understand from the 2018 study and from talking to lots of students that campus is a huge stabilizing force. It's a protective factor. And so being able to access, you know, a place to study, the internet, tech, the library, food, the food pantry, the health center, so many different supports, as well as your professors and your friends, that this is a really destabilizing to move off campus for students experiencing homelessness, and that many more actually are. So do you want to, I'll switch to you, Rashida.
Sure. So this was stunning, I think, for Jen and I, as we were looking at this. For some of our students, the rates of homelessness shot up incredibly. And so these quotes are both from a student who named himself Cosmo. And he said, at the beginning of COVID, I lived off campus and all of my roommates lost their jobs. They all left and we left too. We weren't evicted technically, but we weren't on the lease, so we couldn't be there. So as I said before, a lot of our students are moving from place to place. In a COVID environment, you cannot do that, obviously. Cosmo said, I was homeless for 3 weeks to a month. I hotel hopped and just stayed at any cheap motel I could find while I saved up. Eventually, I was able to find one. The money that, so he talked about the resources that he used. He says, I had some money, then he got the benefit of CARES Act money, and then he asked for help from folks, Catch As Catch Can, and he was able to secure a place. But he said it was really hard. And I want to describe for us as a community that for some students, they had stabilized while on campus. So some of the students that we spoke with were in emergency housing. And then campuses, you know, really wanted to care for our students and make sure our students were safe. But for students who were in a crisis, they were not sure sometimes how to manage the communication they were getting about whether they should leave and who they should talk to if they couldn't leave and how that should be carried out. So some of those students slipped out into communities and didn't have places to go, while others were supported by campus. And this was crucial for our students. There were also students who were housing unstable. So like Cosmo had housing, but he was one paycheck away or one crisis away. And of course, COVID brought us clusters of crises. And so he ended up out hotel hopping. And then there were students who were already homeless, moving from place to place or living in cars. And they found themselves often without places to go. So this really is something that we have to pay attention to, because these students already were incredibly hidden and are that much more hidden now. So we have to actively try to find them if they're going to get support.
And so so what we're looking at here is basic needs programs accessed by different student groups prior to and during COVID again. And considering what, you know, Rashida's just saying, students are always on the move, and having a campus as a centralized place to get support when we had to switch, when we had to pivot. And at this time, I think we're still figuring out how we were going to support students, you know, with social distancing a little bit more than we are now. You can see that although need was going up, especially in terms of finding housing, it was difficult to access services on campus. And you can see those numbers were dropped in terms of service access for so many students. I'll turn that back over to Rashida.
Sure. So Carol was at a campus where there were no services available that she was aware of. And she said, I think the biggest thing is just having access to food, even if it's just canned food. I think that's the biggest thing that I miss. I know that they've sent out resources for other in community, like food shelters. I know some of them, I've looked at them. A lot of them are limiting their hours due to just health stuff, along with just safety in their staff and others. I think it's just the biggest thing. And I think as Jen said earlier, for a lot of our students, their campuses are their anchors. And so some of them are, I mean, our students are incredibly resilient, and incredibly capable, and they are navigating things as best as they can, and they're still looking to us for support. So this is from a report that was done by Evelyn Claus at Long Beach State, and the CWEP program, our Student Emergency Intervention and Wellness Program, is our basic needs program at Cal State Long Beach's campus. And you will see the drastic increase in applications that we've seen from one year to the next. And COVID has something to do with that, but I will also say that our students are becoming more and more aware that we have these services available. And so they recognize that they need it and are coming to us for support. As most of the folks know, because I know in some cases I'm speaking to the choir here, the CSU, along with the UC and our California community colleges, were funded $6.5 million. No, the CSUs were funded $6.5 million for college-focused rapid rehousing. And we have 7 mighty campuses who are starting their rapid rehousing, have started their rapid rehousing programs. Rapid rehousing is a community and campus partnership in which we as campus folks identify students and then refer students to a community-based agency that then provides case management and subsidy for housing. And this is a critical step for us because college-focused rapid rehousing really is meant and intended to support those students who are in the highest need. And we are running out of time, so I will pass over to Jen and have her talk about our recommendations.
All right, so our recommendations, we have a few here, but we're also launching a new study to look at basic needs this week. And so we will have more along with the report that will be coming out about the COVID study. But what we want to continue, or what we want to recommend, is to continue to adapt basic need supports for students that are safe and accessible during social distancing. Campuses are doing so much right now. And I know that Leah will be talking about some of those soon. And it's important that we just keep considering how we can do that better as students are juggling and trying to figure out, where they live and doing school and, progressing forward. As you could see with some of the findings, the different groups of students experience food and housing insecurity differently, as well as access supports differently. And, we need to make sure that as a system and on campus that we are continuing to look at how we can recognize, acknowledge, and support the different experiences that students have to make sure that we are supporting everyone together. And along with that, just continuing to do support basic needs program assessment and evaluation. Campuses are doing so much themselves and sharing those findings like we are today, and continue to evaluate what's working and talking to students to get that message, I think, is critical.
So we like to always end with the voices of students, and are really happy to have panelists who can be here as well. But we will end with a quote from a student. But I do want to say that, some of our students are stopping out, are pushed out of our institutions because they are crucially struggling with their basic needs. On the other hand, many of our students are doubling down on their investment in higher education because they know they have no other choice, and they have to invest what means they have into this education, and they are investing in us and are asking us to invest in them.
I strongly believe that education is the greatest investment that the society can put upon itself. An investment in us, which is the future, which is the next generation, is the most rewarding for an economy, for research, for science, for literature, for culture, the arts, and for any budget cuts to be coming towards us will dramatically affect us. They affect our health, they affect our future, they affect our progression out of poverty.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Rashida, Dr. Crutchfield, thank you so much. That was so informative, and just I love your commitment to elevating student voices. And I do agree with what you said earlier, that our students are both doing the best that they can and looking to us for help. And when I look at your research, I just think our students are experiencing systemic issues that require systemic solutions. This is not something that is, you know, in their hands or that they were responsible for. So they are looking to leadership in the system to help them through this time, and they are doing the best they can. So that brings me to our next person who has a great commitment to the system work, and that is Dr. Leah Jarnigan. So Dr. Jarnigan, our CSU campuses have been supporting student basic needs for a number of years now. I know at Sac State, I've seen our campus resources grow exponentially in the last few years, and we're fairly new, but I can see that we have definitely picked up some momentum because of system-wide support. And I'm also able to regularly engage with my peers at other campuses. So I know this is true for others in the CSU. And thank you again for your team at the Chancellor's Office for doing this system-wide work in the leadership that allows us to help our students. So this next one is for you. In the current pandemic, students' basic needs are more important than ever. So how have the CSU campuses pivoted to support student basic needs within a socially distant, appropriate manner? And what are some of the promising practices that you've seen?
Thanks so much, Danielle. And I must start by saying a warm welcome to everyone who is joining us today, and just deep gratitude for the work that I know is happening across our campuses. Danielle, what's happening at Sacramento State to a great degree is a true reflection of your commitment and what you are pouring into your students and your infrastructure there on your campus. And that can be said to be true as well across all of our 23 campuses. I have to say a thank you to Michael for helping to articulate for us the true impact of the work that we're doing across the system and how critical that is for student success. And we are truly fortunate to know about the work that you're doing and to have you with us here today. And finally, I must say to my friends, Jen and Rashida, for your continued research, your advocacy, and your continuing to lift up and inform us as a system of the importance of the work that we're doing, and most specifically for disaggregating the impact of not only basic needs and security, but the pandemic across our student subpopulations is just critical for us to continue moving forward in an informed way. So thank you so much to both of you. So when I think about our system and what we are doing, I'd really like to start at a macro level and say that what we've heard today, the need that has been articulated so elegantly, is true across higher education. And so one of the ways that we're able to put infrastructure in place in a systematic way or a systemic way is to partner with our colleagues across the UC and across the 116 California community colleges. CHEBNA, who you heard Rashida refer to earlier, the California Higher Education Basic Needs Alliance. We are a group of dedicated colleagues and educators across the three systems of public higher education in California. We came together early when the pandemic hit and said, in what ways can we across our systems support our students and to put infrastructure in place that would be helpful and that would also be accessible by anyone who was looking for resources. And so we worked together to create a resource page that I think Enoch's going to drop into the chat for us that pulled together resources across the state of California. It's extensive and as inclusive as we could find information to make sure that anybody who was seeking resources, thanks so much, Enoch, would have one centralized place to go. One of the things that we have learned is that asking students to do a level of investigating that requires that they spend hours digging through websites and trying to find information that may be hidden 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 clicks down and deep in a website is not effective at all. And indeed, it is tiring and it has a really detrimental effect on their sense of hopefulness. And so we wanted to lift up, if you will, and bring resources all into one location. You also heard some references to our housing work. I am really pleased to say that our implementation of the Rapid Rehousing Program has truly not been slowed down in terms of the pandemic. We've had to find some creative ways to work together and to reach the students, but the commitment is there, and it's continued. And our 7 campuses and their 10 agencies that they're working with across the state of California have been able to continue forward with the implementation and indeed are serving students currently and will continue to do so. I'm also pleased to say that we've been able to do some pivoting around recognizing that students who are identified for eligibility for rapid rehousing may have had to relocate as a result of the pandemic. And our agencies have been creative and flexible in trying to find ways to provide housing for those students, even when they have moved further away from their home campus, where rapid rehousing is focused. So that has been a positive. The other thing that we've done around housing is to work with about half of our campuses in the system through the summer to recognize that as students left the campuses in mid and late spring, housing inventory became available. And so our campuses were able to pivot and identify housing inventory that would be socially distance appropriate to be able to provide emergency housing for our students who are basic needs insecure. And we were able to do that through the summer, acknowledging that the housing inventory was available. As fall came upon us and we knew that some students would be returning to campus, that strategy has shifted a bit, but that strategy over the summer was able to serve several hundred students who otherwise would not have had housing. On the food distribution front, we've become quite creative across our campuses with pop-up food pantries, with drive-through food distribution efforts, with pre-packaged food resources for students that were available to students on a pre-scheduled pickup time, so that we were not having hundreds of people congregating in a space together. So utilizing a, if you will, food distribution reservation system so that students were able to come at a time where it was safe. Of course, with everyone wearing appropriate masks and maintaining social distance, we also know of some campuses that have done some food delivery programs, actually taking the food resources to the students where they're currently living, which was not something that was happening prior to the pandemic. In terms of creativity, we also heard about one campus whose food dining program was no longer operating at the same level, who was able to repurpose their refrigeration systems to allow their campus food pantry to be able to have perishable foods available to them, and therefore make those available to students as well through their food pantry program. 2 other strategies I'd like to mention around food distribution before I turn my comments to the impact on mental health and how campuses are collaborating there. We know that our CalFresh application assistance is critical in terms of our students accessing this important California resource. And so our campuses have pivoted to a virtual and remote application assistance platform, assisting students over the telephone, assisting students in this kind of modality through Zoom to walk through essentially filling out what is a very complex application and helping the students understand what the process is going to be for the follow-up phone call with the CalFresh representative and ensuring that they're taking all the steps necessary to apply for this important resource. And finally, we became quite aware in early summer that many of our students had relocated as a result of our campuses moving to primarily a virtual and remote instruction platform. And with that relocation, our students didn't necessarily have access to all the terrific resources I've just been mentioning in terms of food distribution at their home campus. And so we began working in early summer across all 23 campuses to understand what would it look like to be able to have students be able to visit their local CSU campus where they're not attending classes, but they are an eligible CSU registered student. What would it look like to receive some basic needs resources at that campus? And so I'm happy to share that while we started with a very warm handoff referral system across our campuses, we are now looking at a reciprocity opportunity where students would be able to receive resources and assistance at their local CSU campus. More to come on that this fall before the end of the term. Michael did such an elegant job of speaking to the impact of having basic needs and security on a student's well-being. We know that students live and thrive through multiple domains all concurrently, and that these impact each other. And mental health is no exception to that. I have the opportunity to work with our counseling center directors as part of my role, and I have worked with them as they have moved their resources to a remote platform, utilizing a HIPAA compliant form of Zoom to be able to conduct one-on-one counseling sessions, as well as support groups and workshops since the pandemic started. Mental health resources probably could not be underscored enough in terms of their importance, as the students not only have struggled with basic needs insecurity, but with the impact of COVID, as Jen and Rashida have so accurately described. Our campuses not only are engaged in the service delivery to their students, but also to working with off-campus agencies to extend their resources. We also know of partnerships that have sprung up on our campuses between the Counseling Center and our Basic Needs Center to more integrate those more in a more seamless way, so that those who are working and providing mental health resources to students are aware of the basic needs resources that are available, as well as cross-collaborating across workshops and psychoeducational programming. So I appreciate the opportunity to share with the group here today a bit about how our campuses have been creative, they have been collaborative, they have been flexible, and they've pivoted in such an important moment to serve our students. With that, I would love to be able to highlight a few of the programs that are happening this week across the system that are part of our Hunger and Homelessness Awareness Week. What I'd like to share with you, as you can see from this first bullet point, there are more than 80 activities planned this week alone. So our campuses are actively engaged in making sure that our communities are aware of what's happening. In addition to a number of campuses that are hosting food collection drives and food distribution events for students, we also have some of our campuses are hosting what we call Basic Needs Ambassador training events this week. These are workshops that are provided for faculty and staff across our campuses to help our community members become aware of not only the resources that are available, but some of the signs to look out for in terms of recognizing that a student may be struggling with basic needs and security. These events are happening, the trainings are happening across the campuses this week, and the Chancellor's Office will be hosting a system-wide Train the Trainer event on Basic Needs Ambassadors early in January of next year. We've selected a few, just a handful here of programs that are happening this week. The Cooking with Chef Mirando of Pure Love Food Co. is happening Friday at 5 p.m. And this includes a cooking demonstration with Chef Mirando, who is a campus alum, Christian Mirando, who will be teaching the audience how to properly cook meat products. At Sacramento tomorrow from 10:30 to 12, Danielle and her team will be hosting a webinar entitled Emergency Housing Program Creation and Development Process, which will highlight how to learn how to create and expand a student emergency housing program. And I believe there's a link being dropped in the chat for you all. At San Francisco State, Life Hack at-home coffee recipes, This is a social media event starting today, teaching folks how to save money by learning how life hacks to make their favorite chain coffee drinks in an inexpensive manner. And for the coffee fans, including Jen, that's a big one. At San Jose State, a panel discussion, Bay Area Basic Needs and Security in College Students. That'll happen Thursday at 1 p.m. This will include a panel of local leaders who will discuss ways that audience members can help identify students who are struggling, why the Bay Area is so impacted with basic needs and security, and how to support students. And finally, at Cal State San Marcos, my alma mater, a Housing and Security Resource Panel, which will be hosted tomorrow at 4 p.m., where audience members will be able to learn about their Rapid Housing Program, which is available to students through their Cougar Care Network. So just a handful select programs happening across our CSU campuses this week alone. We could not be more proud of all the work that they are doing. Thanks so much, Danielle.
Thank you, Dr. Jarnigan. That's a lot of great information. It sounds like schools are really trying to respond and get creative about serving students. And it's really nice to hear about all of the professionals involved in helping get this off the ground. And I think just as important in supporting student basic needs could be our faculty and staff, right, that are on the campus. And so I want to circle back over to our wonderful panelist, Michael, who's been very helpful today. So I just wanted to conclude our panel with this question for Michael. What would you say to our faculty and staff who are watching right now and want to support students? What can they do to contribute to and lift the programs and services that we've heard about today? And is there something faculty can do within their instructional environment to support this effort?
Yeah, first I want to start off by saying thank you for the people doing the work. It's amazing. Getting behind initiatives such as this is impactful. It is helping change the course of students' experiences in college and aiding in their success. Universities, faculty, staff, administration should have a moral imperative to make sure that all students, especially those furthest from opportunity, have the support needed to achieve equitable educational outcomes and gain a sense of agency at the university level. Dr. Timothy White was once quoted saying, "Students are our next generation of innovators, doers, and that will power California's economy and society for the next 50 years. They are our most powerful social justice and environmental advocates. They are our future business and political leaders. They should be getting the support that is needed." I couldn't agree with him more. The CSU is lucky to have such an amazing chancellor who had the vision that students be at the forefront of all that we do. Congratulations on your retirement, Dr. White. My mother just retired earlier this month and she hasn't stopped smiling since. She is so happy. So I want to wish you happiness, sir. Your leadership will be missed, but I look forward to learning from Chancellor-Select Dr. Joseph Castro in the future. As a basic needs intern, I had the opportunity to help students understand and go through the process of applying for CalFresh. Some people might know this service by another name, which is food stamps. One of the hurdles we had with students involved the stigma for asking for this service because of the name. I learned early on to call the assistance by CalFresh, or by its federal name, SNAP, which stands for Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. My partner, who I interned with, and I set out to normalize this process. We spoke about the benefits to anybody that would be willing to listen. We did info sessions with clubs, fraternities, sororities, asked professors to allow us to present in class, and sat in the cafeteria where we knew students were at. We hope to make applying for CalFresh as normal as applying for financial aid. Faculty, administration, and staff can help with this normalization by becoming informed about the prevalence of food and housing insecurity on campus, know about the resources, and promote them. This can be done by adding a statement in the syllabus about basic needs services, mention the food distribution days, and essentially become a resource themselves. You can also become a basic needs ambassador, which is accomplished by training at your campus. Each campus has unique programs and services, so I encourage all of our faculty, staff, and administration to get connected with basic needs or a food pantry on campus to learn about these resources. Basic needs services are new to college campuses, and as a student, I'd love to see faculty, staff, and administration work in collaboration with the students. I believe in the power of a team effort. Growing up, I played many team sports, and one of my coaches would always remind us and use a great acronym for team, which is together, everyone achieves more. This is a campus-wide endeavor, and the more partners, the better. So this is my call to action. After today's call, spend 2 minutes sending an email to your campus basic needs partners and see how you can support them and students even more. It takes so little time to do this, but the impact can be so great. This work is important and impactful in changing the university experience for some of our most at-risk students. If there was a time to get behind this work, it would be right now. The pandemic has been tough on everybody. We are not as connected. I know personally, I miss being on campus. It is definitely not the same experience, but we're adapting. In regards to food and housing insecurity support, it's not the same either. There is a need to adapt. Our campus at CSU Stanislaus has done a model job with this process. CalFresh applications are being done on Zoom now. Live cooking demos are being featured for students to watch on the campus website. Our pantry has remained open. Curbside food distributions are being held multiple times a month. Emergency meal gift cards are being distributed to provide food access to those that cannot travel to campus. Emergency funds and emergency housing placements are provided to students who are experiencing housing insecurity. I'd like to show appreciation to the incredible partnerships within our community as well. We rely on partnerships both on and off campus to help with this work, and is much appreciated. We can do anything as a university system. If we keep clear eyes and full hearts, we can't lose. In February, I was lucky enough to be invited to a California Higher Education Basic Needs Alliance Summit, or CHEBNA as others have said. The energy in that conference room was phenomenal. It was beautiful, seeing everyone learning from each other and just trying to figure out how to better assist students succeed. It was beautiful. That's the only way I can describe it. It was one of the greatest experiences of my life. We might not be in person currently, but in regards to helping students succeed, just keep that same energy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael. Those are great words. And I was at CHEBNA and I felt that energy. It was phenomenal. I still think about it today and just how many people are committed to this effort. Okay, so we are going to take some questions from the listeners, and we have our first one here that I think can go to Rashida and Jen. So one of our listeners here says, I would like to ask, how do you anticipate, well, first they say, thank you for presenting the latest data on basic needs. And I would like to ask, how do you anticipate navigating some of these efforts as the state goes back to more restrictions on reopening in the rise of COVID-19 cases?
I think that question came from Zubaydah, who's doing some great work up at San Francisco State. So hi, shout out. I think we have some tricky navigation to do, right? Because I think we really get to, as many people have said already, be really creative. I think that students are experiencing, all of us are dealing with anxiety and stress right now. And so we're responding on all fronts to supporting their needs, their basic needs. And, you know, we talk a lot about food and housing, but clearly mental health for us is also a basic need. And so we get to think about, if we have not yet launched our food pantries, how do we connect with community-based agencies to ensure that we can provide support for food? How do we connect students to housing opportunities as well? A lot of places where we have high levels of homelessness across the state of California started, you know, Project Room Key type support programs. And so, but our students sometimes don't come to the attention of those folks. And so we get to think critically about how do we bridge those gaps. Jen, do you want to add to that? Nope.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. We might have time for one more question. And I see here from Aaron Openchico. So one of the biggest barriers for elevating and sustaining basic needs on pantries and pantries on campus seem to be space or lack thereof, or not located in high student traffic areas. So how can we as a system and as a campus advocate and make sure space on campus is prioritized for basic needs pantries? And maybe Dr. Jarnigan might be able to help us with this one.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Thank you for the question, Aaron. I do appreciate the difficulty with identifying space. So when you look at an institution, people, dollars, and space are typically the trifecta in terms of some of the most challenging resources to obtain and to maintain. And so when I think about how can one position the importance of basic needs work being located in spaces that are high visibility, I think one of the keys to that truly is some of the awareness work that we've been talking about on this webinar today. It is about taking the conversation of basic needs away from the margin, where students often are invisibly struggling, and working with campus networks and colleagues constituency groups, stakeholder groups, including students, very critical voice in that, to normalize the conversation around basic needs as a resource for the student community on the campus. I think that's really one of the most important steps in advocating for any kind of space allocation. You must be able to speak to not only the need, but the connection of how that space is going to be utilized to the institution's mission. And really the only way that I have found to do that kind of advocacy work is to not be telling that story in a vacuum, to not be doing that by yourself, to not be doing that with just a small number of colleagues, but rather to weave the conversation and the importance of the work to student success throughout the fiber of the campus. And that means that you need your student leadership to be speaking to this and coming to the table to acknowledge to what resources may they be able to contribute. I know in my own experience, having opened a food pantry in a student union, one of the reasons that was able to happen is because the student leaders who own and operate that non-state state-funded facility were able to say, we are willing to make a sacrifice of how we're utilizing a space right now to turn that into a food pantry. So that's one example of how the student leaders were really critical to that conversation. I think in other ways, it's important to partner with your faculty. So we are so fortunate, not only because Jen and Rashida are just wonderful people, but their expertise, their talent, their skill in the research realm to be able to help inform the CSU. You need partners like Jen and Rashida on your campus whose research work is helping to inform and to lift up the conversation around your service work, around what you're doing in your practice. Finding those kinds of partners, then finding additional partners within your faculty leadership group if you have a staff association, and really working with your leadership on your campus to prioritize the need. It's going to be different on every campus is one thing I would say. Local context absolutely impacts the availability of resources, including space for basic needs work. But the commonality, I believe, is having a chorus of voices who are speaking about the importance of basic needs support to student success.
Thank you, Dr. Jarnigan, very much. So there are more questions coming in, and at this point, we wish we had more hours with all of you. So you can keep your questions coming. We can do our best to answer them via chat. And I want to thank you, all of our wonderful panelists today, for your time. Your commitment to student success is very inspiring, and I just thank you for all you do and the tiresome hours that you take elevating student voices and creating systems of support in response. So we hope that everyone found this information helpful. Meeting our students' basic needs really does take a village, as you've seen today, from our faculty who are teaching in the virtual classroom, our frontline staff answering student calls and emails. So working together, we can support our students with the resources, programs, and services that they need to be successful. And as Michael pointed out, to be operating at the top of that pyramid. So supporting student basic needs is certainly not the sole responsibility of one person or one department. It takes an entire campus community and partnerships, and as we've seen recently, partnerships with our community agencies as well. So we encourage you to visit our resource page, learn about all the activities planned this week and throughout the CSU, learn about the programs and the services offered by your campus or others, and you can visit the CSU resource map. You can access these by visiting the link that Enoch will place in the chat box. And as folks begin to log off, we will have a slide with links to some of today's material. So thank you again for joining us. Best wishes to all of our campuses hosting activities this week, and I hope everyone has a great day.